In some missing persons cases, convictions are handed out before investigators have even located a body. Similarly, there have been instances in which found remains are determined to belong to a missing person without even so much as a DNA test. When slip-ups like those happen, investigators and loved ones of the victim are completely stunned when the supposedly deceased person is found very much alive. Number 5. In January of 1994, a woman named Zhang Ziyu vanished from central China after getting into a heated argument with her husband. Considering that this case comes from a region that is very discreet with ongoing criminal activity, there isn't much information regarding Zhang's disappearance. The facts offer that Zhang simply walked out of the home and never returned. The following day, her husband contacted law enforcement to report his missing wife. A search was carried out, but nothing was immediately found. There's a huge break in the case about 3 months after Zhang vanished, though. The remains of a young female were found in a local pond at an advanced stage of decay. The body was brought in and confirmed that it was her. After the discovery, her husband was arrested for his wife's demise. Torture during interrogations is a frequently criticized issue in China's legal system. That being said, it's no surprise that the husband said he had been tormented to his breaking point and forced to confess to a crime he didn't commit. He was sentenced to life in prison in 1994 and was serving his time when Zhang randomly resurfaced in 2005, 11 years after vanishing. The exact reason for her return was not confirmed, but it's fair to assume that after the years of guilt, Zhang decided to make things right. Upon her arrival, she visited a local precinct to inform them of her identity. A quick DNA test proved that the woman was in fact the assumed murder victim from over a decade before. The charges that were placed against her husband were dropped and he was released to walk as a free man for the first time in 28 years. Zhang later explained that after the heated argument, she decided it was time to leave the unhappy marriage behind. Zhang started a new life in a distant province and got remarried. The husband reported that he didn't hate his ex-wife for her actions, and was just relieved that the justice was victorious in this case. After his release, he was awarded monetary compensation for wrongful conviction. Number 4. Picking up and moving away to start a new life might seem like an impossible task. However, a woman named Catherine Dyer managed to succeed in starting her new life and living under the radar for 46 years. Catherine was about 30 years old in 1954 when she was living in a Colorado boarding house with many guests. In March of that year, Catherine vanished from the boarding house without so much as a goodbye. Given the circumstances, people began to worry that she was abducted or harmed in some way and didn't leave of her own free will. A missing persons report was filed, and many began to search the local community. In early April, remains of an unknown woman were found in a forest region known as Boulder Canyon. The body apparently closely resembled Catherine, and some friends of hers even confirmed the corpse's identity. The case then switched to an investigation looking for a cold-blooded killer. No leads in the case were ever found though, but after a serial killer was convicted of crimes in the area, investigators assumed that he was responsible for Catherine's demise. He was known as the Lonely Hearts Killer, and Catherine allegedly lived near him before she disappeared. However, there was not enough evidence to charge the killer, leaving the case still unsolved. Eventually, the case was all but forgotten, and efforts were shifted to new cases over the years. In 2009, detectives were surprised by new information in the case that completely changed the crime altogether. 2 caretakers of a woman named Barbara Jones in Australia stumbled across a stack of divorce papers while helping the 84-year-old woman reorganize her belongings. The name mentioned in the paperwork was Catherine Dyer. The caretakers questioned the woman, and she apparently confessed that she was the victim of a decades-old case. The woman contacted Colorado police, and officers were sent to confirm the woman's identity via DNA testing. The results confirmed that she was who she claimed to be. She didn't give much of a reason as to why she vanished and traveled so far from home, but technically speaking, there wasn't anything police could do to charge her. While it was a positive thing that the woman was found alive, it meant bad news for Boulder Canyon Jane Doe. Thanks to the discovery of Catherine, detectives had to revisit the Jane Doe case with even less information than they had before. Number 3. John Wayne Gacy is a notorious household name, referring to a serial killer active from 1972 to 1978 that preyed on young men. Gacy was convicted for taking the lives of 33 victims, but detectives insist that many more crimes were committed, and Gacy simply succeeded in hiding the evidence. In 2011, an effort was sparked to identify at least 8 of Gacy's remaining possible victims. 2 years after this announcement, the sister of a man named Richard Hutton submitted his name to the search efforts. Richard was a 21-year-old when he left his family home in 1977, telling them that he planned to hitchhike from New York to California. He was never heard from again without even so much as a simple phone call. His family assumed he died along the way, and as the Gacy cases started to unfold, they had more and more reason to believe that Richard was one of the killer's victims. Richard fit the physical description of Gacy's type, who had to have passed through the area where Gacy was confirmed to have taken many lives, and he worked as a construction worker, making him a target for Gacy, who also worked construction and was known to have lured many of his victims by hiring them. So 36 years after Richard's disappearance, his family still believed that he was one of the unidentified victims. Cook County Detective Jason Morgan agreed with the Hutton family because Richard fit the bill almost perfectly. He immediately went to work and was eventually led to Richard's front door. The detective was both surprised and relieved when he found the 62-year-old man alive and well. After confirming that he wasn't a Gacy victim, Jason couldn't just dismiss the situation. Instead, he planned a meeting for Richard and his family, which turned out to be a heartwarming reunion. The family had many decades to catch up on, and as far as Richard's vanishing act, he found good work and eventually settled down. He wasn't avoiding his family, he had just lost any means of contacting them over the years. Imagine the array of emotions one must experience when the presumed dead relative knocks on your door one day. Number 2. In March of 1949, a 41-year-old named John Herbert was working as a gas station attendant and going by the fake name Sam Jones when he mysteriously vanished. On March 11, 1949, Sam went into work and never returned home. The following day, the station owner inspected the store and found that $100 in cash had been stolen. A month later, a body of a man was found in a local swamp in Louisiana. Police contacted Sam's girlfriend, Patricia Jones, and she confirmed the body's identity. She mentioned a unique, crooked pinky finger and pants that she herself had previously sewn a button onto. The victim had been stabbed once in the chest, and Patricia claimed that she knew who the killer was, but that he had also recently been killed. She couldn't provide any useful information though, and detectives questioned her own involvement in the case. A short while later, Patricia confessed that her and her former boyfriend were responsible for the stabbing. They were both arrested, but after digging deeper, the boyfriend's alibi and Patricia's constantly changing story led police to assume that Patricia was lying. Both were released, and Patricia returned to the station once again to point her fingers at a man named Donald Easterwood. Donald confessed that he, Sam, and another man had staged the robbery at the gas station and attacked Sam after an argument about splitting the money. A man named Ernest was arrested and denied any involvement. He passed away from a heart attack while in custody. When Donald was put on trial, he admitted that his confession was coerced by the sheriff, who relentlessly beat and threatened him during days of interrogation. Prison guards confirmed that Donald suffered beating-like bruises after his visits with the sheriff. Furthermore, a credible alibi proved that Donald was home on the night of the alleged killing. He was acquitted, released, and awarded $100 for the wrongful arrest. For 2 years, the case seemed like it would never be solved. However, a man visiting Colorado ran across someone that resembled Sam Jones. The man denied the accusations and played dumb, but the witness was certain that it was him. He called Louisiana police and a team was sent to locate the mystery man. Once they found him, he still denied the accusation and even provided a social security card that named him as Frederick Dickerson. After more prying though, he confessed to the truth and revealed himself as Sam Jones. He also shared that the social security card belonged to the man that was found in the swamp. According to the story Sam provided, he was working in the gas station when Frederick came in, and the two somehow wound up in a heated argument. Frederick apparently pulled a knife on Sam, which resulted in Sam hitting Frederick on the head, which caused him to fall and impale himself. He knew no one would believe his story, so he dumped the body. After his return to New Orleans, Sam's story changed and drugged Donald Eastwood back into the mix. Sam was eventually released, and the courts were unable to try Donald for a second time. The identity and circumstances of the victim's death remain unknown. However, the resurgence of a man that was presumed dead for over 2 years is a shocking and very special tale. Number 1. Unlike many of the other cases which lasted over the course of years and even decades, this mistaken death was only carried out for 4 to 6 months before the truth was uncovered, thanks to the mind-blowing return of the victim. A shepherd from a county in Georgia named Elisha became involved in a violent confrontation in the street with a man named Alexei. Alexei attacked Lasha by striking him in the head with a large stick. According to police reports, Lasha died at the scene. After a few days, thanks to some witness reports, Alexei was apprehended for the murder and sentenced to 6 years in prison. 3 friends of Alexei were also arrested for their assumed involvement in helping the killer dispose of the body. All 4 men sat in jail, wrongfully convicted of a crime that technically never occurred. When 4 months later, as the result of what would seem to be a miracle, Lasha returned to the town and informed police that he had not been killed. He explained that the blow to the head only rendered him unconscious. He woke up a few hours later after the streets had been emptied and walked back to his village to carry on with his day-to-day life. He never heard of the wrongful convictions until the day that he showed up. His arrival served as a shock and a blessing to the men that had been charged. It should also be mentioned that this was another case of unethical coercion by a police official. The suspects were reportedly abused and threatened by interrogation officers, which caused them to confess to the crimes. Thankfully, it only took a short time for Lasha to return. Otherwise, these men would have served uncalled for time in a prison system that was described as barbaric. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. If you loved it, maybe consider subscribing. But I've been Ty Knots, and I'll see you in the next video.